This is the early edition, a curated weekday guide to major news and developments over the past 24 hours, curated by Veronica Galka and Lizzie Jennings, and read by an automated voice. Published September 26, 2025 on Just Security, an essential resource for those shaping a just and secure world. Here's today's news. Trump administration actions, prosecutions. A federal grand jury yesterday indicted former FBI Director James Comey on one count of making a false statement and one count of obstruction of a congressional proceeding in relation to the testimony he gave to the Senate Judiciary Committee in 2020. The indictment was signed only by Lindsay Halligan, Trump's former attorney and the new interim U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, who personally presented the case to the jury. According to court records, the jury rejected Halligan's attempt to indict Comey on a second false statement charge. Devlin Barrett, Glenn Thrush, and Alan Feuer report for the New York Times. In response to the indictment, Comey yesterday proclaimed his innocence, stating, "I have great confidence in the federal judicial system, and I'm innocent, so let's have a trial." Comey added that, "My family and I have known for years that there are costs to standing up to Donald Trump, but we will not live on our knees, and you shouldn't either." According to sources, Troy Edwards, a senior federal prosecutor who is Comey's son-in-law, announced his resignation in response to the indictment, saying that he is quitting to uphold my oath to the Constitution and country. Kyle Cheney and Josh Gerstein report for Politico. A senior official in the office of Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche on Monday instructed more than a half-dozen U.S. attorneys' offices to draft plans to investigate the Open Society Foundations, a grant group funded by George Soros to support democratic initiatives around the world, the New York Times reports. According to the Times, the official's directive suggests that the DOJ leaders are following orders from Trump that specific people or groups be subject to criminal investigation. Devlin Barrett reports. Senior DOJ leaders are also pushing for charges to be filed against Trump's former national security advisor John Bolton this week, according to sources. Some of the DOJ leadership see Bolton's case as a means of bringing forward one of the criminal cases sought by Trump, a different source added. DOJ prosecutors currently think they could bring a stronger case against Bolton by the end of the year. Caitlin Polance and Hannah Rabinowitz report for CNN. Other Trump administration actions. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth yesterday ordered hundreds of U.S. military generals and admirals to gather at Marine Corps Base in Quantico, Virginia, next week, without stating his reasons for issuing the directive. A Pentagon spokesperson affirmed that Hegseth will be addressing his senior military leaders early next week, but provided no additional details. Several sources who spoke to the Washington Post about Hegseth's directive voiced concerns about the security implications of the impromptu gathering and the potential it could collide with a government shutdown. Tara Kopp, Dan Lamoth, Alex Horton, Ellen Nakashima, and Noah Robertson report. In a presidential memorandum, Trump yesterday ordered the DHS, the DOJ, and the Treasury Department to tackle alleged domestic terrorism and organized political violence by coming up with a strategy to investigate, prosecute, and disrupt entities and individuals engaged in acts of political violence and intimidation, and their funders. The memorandum singles out an alleged rise in left-wing political violence. Ivan Pereira reports for ABC News. Devlin Barrett reports for the New York Times. Attorney General Pam Bondi this week summarily fired the third federal prosecutor working in the Southern District of Florida. According to multiple sources, Bondi fired the prosecutor, Will Rosenzweig, because he said negative things about Trump on a social media blog while working for the prominent law firm Cobre and Kim in Washington during Trump's first term. Jay Weaver reports for the Miami Herald. The Federal Bureau of Prisons yesterday announced it is ending a collective bargaining agreement with its workers, stripping them of union rights. The whole purpose of ending this contract is to make your lives better, the Bureau's director, William Marshall, said in a message to employees. Michael R. Cisak reports for AP News. U.S. domestic developments. A branch of the National Archives released a mostly unredacted version of Repezzamiki Cheryl's DNJ military records to an ally of Jack Ciattarelli, her GOP opponent in the New Jersey governor's race, CBS News reports. The records include Cheryl's Social Security number, performance evaluations, life insurance information, and her parents' home addresses. A National Archives spokesperson said the records were released in error. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries yesterday demanded a criminal investigation to be launched in response to the unauthorized and illegal release. James Laporta reports, Andrew Solender reports for Axios. The Epstein estate has released new materials to the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee in response to the committee's recent request for cash ledgers, message logs, calendars, and flight logs, according to an aide. Haley Fuchs reports for Politico. Tech developments. The Trump administration yesterday signed a deal with Elon Musk's xAI, which allows the AI tool to be used widely across the government. I thought it was nice. He came over, we had a little conversation, Trump said about his meeting with billionaire Musk. Joe Miller reports for the Financial Times. The Trump administration is considering a plan to reduce the United States' reliance on semiconductors produced overseas. The aim is for U.S. chip companies to manufacture the same number of semiconductors as their customers import from abroad, with those failing to maintain a one-to-one ration paying a tariff, sources told Wall Street Journal. Amrith Ramkumar reports. Amazon yesterday agreed to an unprecedented $2.5 billion settlement with the Federal Trade Commission, resolving allegations that the company had deceived users signing up for its Prime service. FTC Chair Andrew Ferguson called the settlement a record-breaking, monumental win for the millions of Americans who are tired of deceptive subscriptions that feel impossible to cancel. Brendan Bordelon reports for Politico. U.S. cyber officials issued an emergency directive yesterday ordering federal agencies to protect their networks, particularly Cisco devices, against hackers, as at least one agency has been breached. The directive will help officials understand the full scope of the compromise across federal agencies, said Chris Butera, a senior official at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency. Sean Lingus reports for CNN. Sam Sabin reports for Axios. The UN yesterday announced that it is implementing a global dialogue on artificial intelligence governance by forming a 40-member panel of scientific experts to analyze research on AI risks and opportunities. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said he hoped the AI initiative would lead to a new architecture of technology governance. Steve Lohr reports for the New York Times. TikTok will be valued at about $14 billion under Trump's deal to split the social media app from its Chinese parent ByteDance, Vice President J.D. Vance said yesterday. As Trump signed the executive order to provide 120 days to finalize the agreement with Beijing, he said he had a good talk with Chinese President Xi Jinping and that he gave us the go-ahead. Alex Rogers, Dimitri Sevastopoulos, Antoine Guerra, James Fontanella Khan, and Christina Criddle report for the Financial Times. U.S. Foreign Affairs. Deputy Secretary of State Chris Landau proposed changes to radically reform the global system for asylum seekers and refugees, speaking yesterday on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. Landau said reform was necessary as the asylum system serves as a mechanism to make mass illegal migration legal, arguing that nations should be under no obligation to accept asylum seekers. Adam Taylor reports for The Washington Post. The United States will reject the UN Declaration on Chronic Diseases because it ignores the most pressing health issues and includes policies that promote abortion and radical gender ideology, Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said yesterday. Andrew Jacobs reports for The New York Times. Trump yesterday announced that starting October 1st, the United States will impose a new set of tariffs on heavy trucks, kitchen cabinets, and pharmaceuticals. Each of the sectors listed by Trump were the target of a Commerce Department Section 232 Trade Expansion Act of 1962 investigation earlier this year. Ari Hawkins reports for Politico. The State Department yesterday announced U.S. sanctions on a network it said generated revenue for Pyongyang's weapons programs by enabling a Myanmar-based arms procurement firm to buy North Korean arms. Reuters reports. 9 U.S. fighter jets identified and intercepted 4 Russian warplanes flying near Alaska yesterday, the North American Aerospace Defense Command announced in a statement. NORAD said that such Russian activity near Alaska occurs regularly and is not seen as a threat. Amr Madhani reports for AP News. U.S. immigration developments. A New York City Department of Correction investigator violated sanctuary laws by sharing sensitive data with federal authorities about 2 migrants in custody, the New York City Department of Investigation found in a report published yesterday. The DOI report states that the investigator was unaware that he was assisting in civil enforcement, blaming lack of training about local laws that limit cooperation between city law enforcement and federal immigration officers. Emilingo reports for Politico. On Wednesday evening, Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley, Republican of Iowa, and Ranking Member Dick Durbin, Democrat of Illinois, sent letters to Amazon, Apple, J.P. Morgan Chase, and others requesting information on their continued use of H-1B visas and whether U.S. workers have been displaced as a result. Anvi Bhutani reports for The Wall Street Journal. FBI Special Agent Joseph Rothrock said yesterday that the gunman who opened fire on an ICE facility in Dallas this week wanted to cause terror and specifically intended to kill ICE agents, citing handwritten notes found at the man's home. U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Texas, Nancy Larson, said the gunman's actions were the very definition of terrorism. Sean Murphy and Corey Williams report for AP News. J. David Goodman and Christina Morales report for the New York Times. U.S. authorities earlier this week deported Harjeet Kaur, a 73-year-old grandmother who has lived in the United States for over 30 years, to India. Kaur's lawyer described her treatment in detention as unacceptable, saying she spent 60 to 70 hours without a bed and was forced to sleep on the floor despite her double knee replacement. Cheryl Ann Mullen reports for BBC News. Russia-Ukraine war, U.S. and international response. Trump signaled yesterday that he is open to lifting sanctions on Turkey, allowing Ankara to re-enter the F-35 fighter jet program. Trump also called on Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan to stop buying Russian oil during their meeting at the White House. Jared Malson, Meredith McGraw, and Elvin Kivelchim report for The Wall Street Journal. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán said on Hungarian state radio today that Hungary will continue buying fossil fuels from Russia despite Trump's demands. Orbán said that he had told Trump recently that stopping Russian energy imports means the Hungarian economy would be on its knees. Justin Spike reports for AP News. EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Kaja Kallas, said yesterday that Europe alone is not responsible for supporting Ukraine in bringing an end to the war. Kallas emphasized that America is the greatest ally in NATO, so if you talk about what NATO should do, that also means what America should do. Trump was the one who promised to stop the killing, Kallas said, so it can't be on us. Felicia Schwartz reports for Politico. Russia-Ukraine war. NATO and the European Union want to declare, in fact, have already declared a real war on my country, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said yesterday at a G20 ministerial conference. Gregory Svirnovsky reports for Politico. Russia's Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak announced yesterday that Moscow is banning fuel exports until the end of the year. The embargo has been extended due to gasoline shortages across Russia and occupied areas as a result of Ukrainian drone attacks. Ivana Katasova, Anna Chernova, and Kostya Gak report for CNN. My goal is to finish the war, not to continue to run for office, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky told Axios yesterday. Zelensky explained that he does not intend to lead his country in peacetime. Dave Lawler and Barak Ravid report. Other global developments. Russia and China have expanded their capabilities for warfare in space rapidly over the past years, German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius said yesterday. At a space conference in Berlin, Pistorius raised concerns about 2 Russian satellites shadowing Intelsat satellites used by German forces and emphasized the need for developing offensive capabilities in space as a deterrent. Sabine Siebold reports for Reuters. In a national address this week, Moldovan President Maia Sandu cautioned that Russia has spent hundreds of millions of euros in a plot to buy Moldovans' votes ahead of the parliamentary elections this Sunday. Sandu said that the Kremlin intended to intoxicate Moldova with disinformation, using provocateurs to stoke disorder, violence, and fear. Christian Edwards reports for CNN. The United States, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and the United Arab Emirates met on Wednesday in a sideline meeting at the UN General Assembly to discuss the implementation of their roadmap for a humanitarian truce and eventual ceasefire in Sudan. Alan Boswell, the International Crisis Group's project director for the Horn of Africa, said that the General Assembly could be the make or break for stopping the conflict. Edith M. Lederer reports for AP News. Iran likely carried out an undeclared missile test at the Imam Khomeini spaceport last week, according to satellite photos seen and analyzed by AP News. Iran has not formally acknowledged the test, but an Iranian parliament member claimed that Tehran had tested an intercontinental ballistic missile last Thursday. John Gambrell reports. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said today on social media that Tehran would drop the agreement to allow the International Atomic Energy Agency to inspect its nuclear sites if Western powers implemented the snapback sanctions, currently due to be reimposed tomorrow at 0 GMT. The UN Security Council will vote today on a resolution proposed by China and Russia to delay the reimposition of sanctions on Iran for 6 months. Jana Chokair and Ahmed Elamam report for Reuters. Michelle Nichols reports for Reuters. The International Court of Justice announced yesterday that France has dropped a case against Iran for violating 2 French citizens' right to consular protection, as they have been arbitrarily detained in Iran for over 3 years. The court did not specify why the case was dropped. Reuters reports. Israel-Hamas war. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas yesterday condemned Israel's actions in Gaza as genocide and said that the authority is willing to take responsibility for governing Gaza. He also said that Hamas would have no part in governing the territory and called on the militant group to lay down its arms. Farnaz Fasihi reports for the New York Times. Microsoft yesterday announced it had disabled some services to Israel's defense ministry following an internal review that found evidence that Israel was using Microsoft's cloud storage services to hold expansive surveillance data on Palestinians. The data confirmed reporting by The Guardian and Israeli news site Plus 972 earlier this year, which also reported that Israel was using the data to plan its military operations. Shira Frankel reports for the New York Times. Israel-Hamas war, U.S. and international response. Former British Prime Minister Tony Blair has been involved in talks about leading a post-war transitional authority in Gaza, BBC News reports. The proposal under discussion, said to have secured backing from the White House, would entail Blair lead a governing authority supported by the UN and Gulf nations with a view of eventually handing control back to Palestinians. James Landale and Ottilie Mitchell report. Trump yesterday told reporters that he would not allow Israel to annex the West Bank and that a Gaza ceasefire deal is pretty close. Trump is expected to meet with Netanyahu on Monday, following Netanyahu's address to the UN General Assembly today. Helen Sullivan reports for BBC News. Slovenia yesterday imposed a travel ban on Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in connection with the International Criminal Court's war crimes proceedings against Netanyahu. The Slovenian Secretary of State at the Foreign Ministry, Neva Grasic, said that with this action, Slovenia confirms its commitment to international law, the universal values of human rights, and a principled and consistent foreign policy. Reuters reports. Greece will guarantee the safe sailing of boats forming part of the global Sumud flotilla as they traverse through its waters, Greek Foreign Minister Georgos Geropetrides said yesterday. The flotilla is seeking to break Israel's naval blockade and deliver aid to Gaza. Reuters reports. Houthi developments. An Israeli strike on Yemen's capital Sana'a hit residential buildings and killed 8 people yesterday, the Houthi-run government's health ministry said. The Israel Defense Forces said that it carried out its most powerful strike in Yemen, and that it bombed targets belonging to the Houthis' intelligence services, security services, and the military. David Gritton reports for BBC News. Trump administration litigation. A federal judge yesterday issued a preliminary injunction temporarily blocking the Trump administration from deporting dozens of Guatemalan and Honduran children who entered the United States unaccompanied. In her ruling, the judge said that while the administration argued it is reuniting children with their parents, counsel could not identify a single instance of coordination between a parent and any government, American or Guatemalan. AP News reports. The Justice Department yesterday sued California, Michigan, Minnesota, New York, New Hampshire, and Pennsylvania, seeking to gain access to statewide voter rolls that include sensitive personal information of U.S. voters. Nick Corasaniti reports for the New York Times. Allowing Trump to remove Governor Lisa Cook from the Federal Reserve Board would ignore centuries of history and transform the Federal Reserve into a body subservient to the president's will, Cook's lawyers told the Supreme Court in a filing yesterday. Louise Radnofsky reports for the Wall Street Journal. In case you missed it yesterday on Just Security. Repression as Rescue, the Authoritarian Logic of Trump's Early Executive Orders, by Kathy Bjerger. A Human Rights Approach to Nuclear Regimes. Lessons from the Legacy of Nuclear Testing in the Marshall Islands, by Renata Hessman-Delacroix. Thank you for listening to Just Security's early edition today, September 26, 2025. If you enjoy listening, Just Security's analytic articles are also available in audio form on the justsecurity.org website. To stay up to date on Just Security's analysis of law, policy, and current events, go to justsecurity.org. Subscribe to Just Security on Substack, and follow us on LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Facebook, and Threads.